Hello everyone and welcome to the Tavern. I'm the Dapper Bard, and today I'm doing a very rare graphic novel review because it's the Halloween season, and nothing says Halloween like The Nightmare Before Christmas. However, before I start the review, there's a couple things I need to talk about. First off, this review is based off a review copy I got last year. See, the thing is, I got horribly sick last year and did not have the opportunity to review this. And then when I got healthy and finally caught up with my schedule, I thought I had lost it. I stumbled across it recently and said, oh my gosh, October's coming up, it's time to review this. So here it is. Sorry it's late. The Battle for Pumpkin King is a prequel to the movie, and prequels always come with one of two major problems. Either they become very predictable, or they're so odd that they don't really fit in with continuity. How does this prequel comic stand up? Well, let's take a look and find out. The story isn't bad, but I'm still going to avoid spoilers because there are some good moments in this book. The story itself isn't particularly long by graphic novel standards. It's only about 100 total pages, which isn't terrible, but it still leaves you in that position of wanting more. Story is told over 5 major chapters. We begin with a younger version of Jack and Oogie Boogie as we get to know what they were like when they were younger, how they were friends, they competed with each other but in a friendly sort of way, they ended up playing pranks on each other, exactly what you'd expect monster people from Halloween Town to behave like when they were younger. However, change comes when Edgar, the current Pumpkin King, shows up to town to inform everybody that his time as Pumpkin King is coming to an end and that he will need to bring in a successor. The people of Halloween Town nominate Oogie Boogie and Jack Skellington. Both of them are a little bit nervous at first, but they both accept the opportunity to take the challenge to see if they are worthy of being a Pumpkin King. We then go through 3 challenges, with each of the boys putting out their own unique style and technique to try to beat the other. The bigger drama that occurs during this middle part of the book is Oogie Boogie slowly but surely being manipulated by Edgar into being more devious and cheating in order to win, while Jack Skellington is dealing with his mixed feelings of wanting to be Pumpkin King but not wanting to lose his friend Oogie Boogie. Now, if you've seen the movie, you already know how things are going to end here, but it is these dramatic lines that do make the story worth going through, in my opinion. The one major negative I will say about the story is that it leaves you wanting a little bit more. It feels like the ending is a little bit rushed, and that's rather unfortunate because I think that there are some plot threads here that did not get tied up nicely enough to function as a proper lead-in to Nightmare Before Christmas. Granted, Nightmare Before Christmas is probably a few years after the events of this comic, because there is reference to Jack Skellington having run Halloween so many times that he's getting a bit bored with the whole thing, which is why he goes on his whole quest in the first place. It almost feels as if this ending is trying to set up for a potential follow-up story, and while I wouldn't be against it, it would have been nice if this was just a little bit longer and wrapped up a few of the loose ends. As for characters, we have 3 major characters in this story. We have Jack Skellington, who is very much in character. He behaves like the Jack Skellington we all know. We're just seeing a younger, less experienced version of him, where he's generally trying to help people, generally trying to be a good guy, even if a little bit misguided sometimes. And the only times he really gets angry is when someone pushes his buttons too much, which we do see a little of that in the course of the story. This is less about Jack's character journey than it is just about explaining how he became Pumpkin King. After all, his character journey is the story of the actual movie, thus we can't have too many changes to Jack Skellington prior to the version he is at the beginning of the movie. Oogie Boogie, on the other hand, is a very different version of the character. While still a prankster and still a jokester, and still a little bit aggressive, what we see out of Oogie Boogie is a transformation from a generally chaotic but fun-loving guy into the darker character he is by the time we get to the movie. It is interesting to see him get a character arc, and most certainly something I did not expect when reading this graphic novel. That being said, his character shift happens rather dramatically. He goes from, hey Jack, you're my best friend, to, hey Jack, I'm gonna beat you in this game no matter what, to, that Jack, I'm gonna take him down if it's the last thing I do. While it is nice to see Oogie Boogie get a character arc, it would have been nicer if it had been written in a way where it feels more natural. It's a little bit of poking and prodding from Edgar, and suddenly he's evil. The big problem is, Oogie Boogie doesn't feel like the kind of character who is driven by petty jealousy. In the movie, he is clearly an incarnation of chaos and terror, who enjoys making people scream. His battle with Jack at the end of the movie is less a good versus evil fight, and more of a parent taking a toy away from a child throwing a tantrum. There is no major antagonism between the two of them, until Oogie Boogie starts torturing Santa Claus. Thus, seeing this fall from grace type story doesn't really fit Oogie Boogie's personality. It feels like a missed opportunity to really expand Oogie Boogie's personality, but at least there is an attempt at a character arc. Edgar is the character I wanted to know more about. I never thought about who was the previous Pumpkin King at Halloween Town, and seeing Edgar, who actually has a pumpkin head, I was like, oh cool, I want to know more about this guy. What's his deal? And all you really get is that he's old, he doesn't want to give up power, and he's willing to manipulate Oogie Boogie in order to have some semblance of control over his protege, since he apparently doesn't think he could control Jack Skellington. And obviously, Jack Skellington is not the kind of person who could be easily manipulated. I wanted to know more about him and what the people thought of him. He's something of an antagonist in this story, but he doesn't have enough time on page, nor does he have enough personality to really build him into something bigger. You get a nice little sequence about halfway through the comic with him and Oogie Boogie that I really appreciated, but it would have been nice to see more of him, his machinations, and generally how people felt about their current leader. As far as I can tell, he wasn't particularly liked by the people because as soon as Jack wins, everyone is super gung-ho for Jack and kind of forgets that Edgar ever existed. So seeing the reasons as to why that is would have been nice. Then we have quite a few minor characters you will recognize from the Nightmare Before Christmas universe. First off, we have that team of vampires that was around in Mirror Moon. They're 2 quick cameos throughout these 5 chapters, but it's still nice to see them, and it helps connect this story to Mirror Moon and makes it feel like it's all part of the same greater continuity. Obviously, we have a few returning characters from the movie. Sally is there. We see her help encourage Jack when he's worried about his friendship with Oogie Boogie. You do see the beginnings of the relationship these 2 characters would have in the movie, and you can start to understand why over the years that have passed between this story and the movie that Jack has grown to view Sally as a very important confidant and, of course, eventually, a love interest. The mayor probably has the most screen time of any of the returning characters. He is the proctor for the challenges, and you see him have a couple moments where he is questioning the decisions made by Edgar. Frankly, I like the mayor in this. Finally, we have Lock, Shock, and Barrel, the 3 cronies who follow around Oogie Boogie in the movie. We get to see how they met Oogie Boogie and why he would trust them. It is nice seeing them. They are still very much in character despite the fact that they are quite a bit younger than the versions of them we are familiar with. And it's cool seeing how Oogie Boogie grew to really trust these youngsters and why they end up functioning as his primary minions in the course of the movie. More importantly, they aren't overutilized because frankly, we don't need them to be oversaturated in our story. We just need them to meet Oogie Boogie and start functioning as his trouble-causing cadre. Probably the most important part of this book is the art. It definitely has that feeling of the movie. The world of Halloween Town looks fairly authentic. It has that weird, everything's just a little bit off kilter, everything's just a little bit strange, and I think it works really, really well. The backgrounds are generally good. There are a few moments here and there where we just get a gradient background, but for the most part, we do get familiar sights of Halloween Town and some cool looking trees and buildings that help add a little flavor to the book. The character designs are very stylized, but I never had a moment where I said, wait, who's that? I could recognize the mayor, I recognize Sally, I recognize Jack, I recognize Oogie Boogie. Every character I've seen before looks like what they're supposed to look like. And while that might sound like a weak compliment, I've read plenty of adaptations where I look at a character and go, wait, that's supposed to be that person? What? So not only do they have a stylized look, but that stylization allows them to still maintain all the facial features and body shapes that we are used to seeing in the movie. That being said, proportions can be a little bit wonky. Oogie Boogie's size drastically changes, and the way his body kind of contorts and stuff, it does work with kind of how his character is in the movie. you kind of see what they're trying to do, but it makes it odd where sometimes he seems really short, other times he seems really tall. There doesn't seem to be a consistency in Oogie Boogie's height or size. And the same thing can be said for Edgar. Edgar sometimes seems like he's really tall and huge, and other times he seems like he's kind of withered and small. It's an odd thing. It doesn't really hurt the book too much, but the odd proportions did throw me off in a few scenes. As for the action, there isn't any real fighting in this, but there's a lot of running around and building things, and the art has enough dynamism to it that it really felt like there was energy, tension, and stress going on as the characters were dealing with their tests. And I did appreciate that. It added that little extra touch that makes it exciting and you want to see how things turn out. It has a lot of energy, and in fact, it was the energy of the artwork that really got me wanting to find out how everything was going to conclude over the story itself, because the artwork is better than the writing. I can compliment the artwork as much as possible, but throughout this video you've been watching the artwork, so I'm sure you can see what I'm trying to say about the quality and why it might draw you into this universe in a way that writing just can't seem to accomplish. Lastly, the cover art is okay. There's even a cover art gallery within the back of this graphic novel, and frankly, I didn't find any of them to be anything too impressive. Granted, they aren't terrible, they're just very middle of the road. So this book really does emphasize the idea of not judging a book by its cover, as what's inside is better than what we see on the front. Obviously, I'm feeling very positive about this comic. It has a fun story, although it is a little bit predictable, and the ending is kind of weak. Thankfully, all the characters are in character. No one feels like their personality has been changed just to make the story work, which I do appreciate. The art is great, it has a lot of energy, and characters look like they're supposed to look like. In addition to that, the coloring really captures the palette of the movie, and it also complements the stylistic designs of the art. The colors really help bring this book to life, and there's some excellent work being done there. The only major flaws to the art, like I said before, is the proportions are a little wonky sometimes, and occasionally the background is a little bland. My final verdict is highly recommended. If you are a fan of The Nightmare Before Christmas, you will love this story. It adds just a little extra backstory to the movie without causing any damage to the movie or ruining any characters. I also think overall it is just a better comic than Mirror Moon. However, Mirror Moon isn't even that bad either. Check out my review for it and see what I'm saying. Mirror Moon felt like it had a few extra flaws that this book didn't have. If you've read this comic, let me know what you think in the comments. And let me know what's your favorite piece of Nightmare Before Christmas media aside from the movie. For me, it would be the Nightmare Before Christmas levels in Kingdom Hearts, except the Oogie Boogie boss fight in the Chain of Memories HD version. That fight is really frustrating. Still, going to Halloween Town is one of my favorite things to do in Part 1 and 2. Thank you for watching. Before I wrap up, I just want to say Happy Halloween. And I hope you can enjoy some scary movies, or some spooky themed comedies, or whatever your Halloween traditions are. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you at the tavern.